to NCTV's podcast. Chase Harden joined alongside me, Great Tomasco, and the newest guest on our show, Luke Frame. Today we're talking about the NHL and what's to come in the playoffs. And Framer, start us off with what you've seen, upsets, all that type of stuff.
I mean, what I've seen, when you talk about the NHL playoffs, right off the bat, I think I just need to mention the Florida Panthers versus Boston Bruins series. The Bruins were supposed to pretty much have a walkthrough to the Stanley Cup final. And then in the first round, by the wild card 2, the Florida Panthers upset them in 7 games for Hagee in overtime.
Yeah, they were down 3-1. And, all these heavyweights, like the Bruins, that's got to be one of the biggest, chokes in sports, going from having the best record.
It's like Tampa a few years ago.
That was crazy. Obviously, they're up 3-1. You're like, oh, they're off to the next round. And then Florida just turns it up. And right now they're playing at a really high level. And then the Leafs, too, they've got a name behind, choking as well. I think it's been 20 years since they've made the conference championship.
Yeah. No, they haven't they haven't gone past the first round in 19 years.
Well, this was the first year they have.
And the first time they do, they get whooped 4-1.
Yeah, and that was, they have all these superstars, but they just, the trend is like they're not producing in the playoffs, like Marner, Matthews, and playoff hockey is just a different breed of hockey. Right now, in my opinion, I think it's either the Hurricanes or, the Panthers that are going to take the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, the East is always bigger than the West. It happens the same way every year either. I think the last 5 years, 4 out of the 5 or maybe even 5 out of the 5, a team from the East has won it. And so going on to the other side, the Metro Division, Carolina beating your Islanders in 6 games, overtime, heartbreaker. What do you think about that series?
Every year I feel like it's the Islanders and Hurricanes within that playoffs. Last year they didn't make it, but the years prior, the Islanders got the best of them twice. It was a tough series. On paper, the Hurricanes were the better team, but in the playoffs, it's playoff hockey. The Islanders put up a good fight. That was a tough goal that Sorokin let in, but he just played phenomenal all year.
Yeah.
But if you want to chirp about my Islanders, look at your Rangers. They have everybody in the world, and yet they can't get past the first round. They have Panarin and all these guys. Up 2-0, it's
Kreider.
It's sweep time. I thought they were going to sweep the Devils 4-0, and then they lost in Game 7, and then
now hold on.
The Devils got smoked by the Hurricanes.
Yeah, because the Rangers were the only ones who could actually fought with the Hurricanes.
The Islanders put up a good fight.
No, I know. I'm not trying to chirp your hours, but let me just say, the New York Rangers were on paper a better team. They had more playoff experience. And I'm not even talking about superstars. When you look at one of the best goalies in the league, I would say top 3, top 4. When you look at our top 3, 4 lines, our 4th line was scoring a lot of goals. We didn't come out flying the way we did in games 1 and 2 and any of the other games except for Game 6.
So what are your thoughts about firing Gallant?
For anyone who isn't familiar, the Rangers fired their head coach after losing in the first round. To be honest, the way I see it, I didn't actually hate Gallant. The only thing I would have to say is I don't think he gave the kids that we were trying to develop enough time, which is why I think they're going to trade Alexis Lafreniere, my favorite player, next year. And so I think you lose in the first round to a team with all these superstars, Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, and you have to look for someone to blame, which in this case has to be the head coach, because you can't blame the GM who made these amazing deals to get us these amazing players. You can't blame the 4th line. You can't blame Igor Shesterkin, who had, in the last 2 playoffs, including last year too, he had a total of 29 goals above expected saved, which is unreal. Like the only thing we've seen like that is Vasilevsky and when the Tampa Bay were on their run. So it's just crazy. Now I don't want to talk about my Rangers too much, or else we'll be here all day. So let's go down to the West now. What did you see there? Seattle, Avalanche, Dallas, Wild.
I think that, personally, Dallas is off to the next round, and then Vegas. Vegas has been a scary team since they've come into the NHL back in 19?
Yeah, it was 19.
Something like that. They have.
And by the way, they initially had Gallant coaching in their first year in the league.
They made it to the Cup and lost to the Caps. But they've just been a scary team. And you look at that team, and they don't have a ton of guys that are, big name players. They have a couple, but nothing like the Rangers. But it's just like their style of play has been good every single year, and every year out, they're just playing good hockey, physical. They score goals, they make plays. And Vegas is going to be a scary team. And then, the Dallas beating the Kraken. This is their 2nd year in the NHL. So I think even if Vegas wins this year, it's they would be the quickest team to win a cup. Yeah. I think this is the last year before that would happen. But they're a scary team. I would take them beating Dallas. And then in the Hurricanes-Panthers series, I'm going to take the Hurricanes in 7, and then Hurricanes-Vegas, I'm going to take the Canes.
Now, just to go off your point between Vegas and the Oilers, I just want to read off. So these are the Oilers leaders for that series. Leon Draisaitl had 13 goals in 6 games. Evan Bouchard, a defenseman, 13 assists. Connor McDavid had 20 points. And Connor McDavid, obviously, best player in hockey. Jack Campbell, their goalie, .961 save percentage, which is unbelievable. Now, when we go to Vegas, Jack Eichel, 6 goals and 8 assists and 14 points.
Like spread out, talent spread.
Like it's not like a bad style, but like when you compare it to the Oilers have 3 guys, and the rest of their team is just in shambles. And every year, Connor McDavid gets left out to dry, and that just goes to show that Vegas has that depth and has that different style of play that's just good. And
all the guys buckle in to that environment, whereas I feel like the Oilers, like you said, Framer, everything revolves around McDavid. Like, I mean, if you,
100%.
You put whatever, Nugent Hopkins on his line. He was a guy that put up like 30 to 40 points a year.
100 points this year.
His best year was like 40-something points, 50-something points. And all of a sudden they throw him on McDavid's line, who makes every player look that much better. 103 points, something like that. So it just goes to show McDavid, this Oilers team is scary, but it's really only their top,
few lines.
Yeah, and they can't fully build around that atmosphere, whereas Vegas can. And the conference championships into the Stanley Cup, this should be great playoff hockey with what we're about to see.
So obviously Chase gave his predictions a little bit earlier, but just moving on here, Frame, who do you have making the finals here and taking home the cup?
So here are my thoughts. In the West, you have Dallas and Vegas. And now Dallas, underrated team. I got family in Dallas. Love the city. They have had, in my opinion, an easy walk to the cup. They played Minnesota, a hurt, fragile team who their top performers didn't show up. Then they played the Kraken, good team, no playoff experience. And now they play Vegas, a superstar team, or not a superstar team, sorry, a very good team that I think they're going to get whooped on. I would take Vegas in 5 for that one. Carolina, Panthers. I think the Panthers Cinderella story. I'm a big fan of the Cinderella story, but I think their run ends here, and I think Carolina's going to take that in either 6 or 7. And I just don't see Carolina losing to a team like Vegas. I don't, because in the way that Vegas plays grindy hockey and good hockey, Carolina does that too. But Carolina has those superstars that can back it up, right? So, which is why I think that I would take Carolina over Vegas in, let's say, I would say 6 games. I think that's my.
Yeah, I've got same thing. Hurricanes Knights, as you touched on. It's just the Panthers have made it too far. They beat the Bruins, really exciting, but you can't. It's kind of beginner's luck. You're not going to make it all the way, and even if you make it to that finals game, I don't think they're winning it. So I've got a similar prediction to Frame. I'm right on board with him, Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I just gave everything, and I think we all had the same predictions. But now that we are all taking the Hurricanes and chirping the Panthers, who barely made the playoffs but are now looking like the scariest team right now in the playoffs, because of that, I might have to take. That's tough. The Hurricanes are so well coached.
I will say this. They're also, we haven't even talked about the coach, but all these teams are unbelievably coached, except incredibly, what I was going to say the most is definitely the Panthers and the Hurricanes. I will say this: whoever wins the Panther-Hurricane series will win the Stanley Cup, and I'll say that. You can quote me on that. I am 100% certain that
holding you to it.
Whoever wins that series will win the Stanley Cup. You don't. If you're Florida, you don't beat the Bruins, the Leafs, and the Hurricanes to lose to Vegas.
No,
and that's no offense to Vegas, but you just don't. You make it through that Eastern Conference battle. I think you win the cup, and this year I think it's the same.
Yeah, and I mean, once you get to the cup, everybody's playing for, obviously that. I mean, ultimately in the playoffs, you're all playing for the best trophy in sports. But like I said, these next 2 games are going to be really good ones, and it's going to be fun to watch the rest of the playoffs. That should just about do it from segment 1. This is going to have 3 segments. This is the hockey one, NHL. We're going to have another one with NBA and a final one with college lacrosse. So this is segment 1 of 3. We'll see you in segment 2. Chase Harden, Great Tomasco, and the new face, Luke Frame, saying so long from segment 1. We'll see you in the next one.
Welcome back to segment 2 of season 2, episode 6 of the Beyond the Whistle podcast, playoffs edition. Today we're talking about the basketball playoffs on the NBA. Will, take us away.
Thank you, Gray. Hi, I'm Will Langford. Rob Frangio next to me. Thank you for introducing us, Gray. Let's start with a recap of the playoffs. So right now in the Western Conference Finals, it's Nuggets-Lakers. Denver's got leading the series 1-0. And in the Eastern Conference, the Heat versus Celtics, and Miami took game 1. To advance to these conference finals, Lakers beat the Warriors in 6, Nuggets beat the Suns in 6, Heat beat the Knicks in 6, and the Celtics beat the 76ers in 7. So we've had a really good playoff run so far, very competitive. Even the first round was really fun to watch. The Kings, who haven't been to the playoffs in years, took the Warriors to 7 games. What a series that was. Rob, you want to speak on that one?
Yeah, that was really fun watching, especially the Game 7. I got to say, if the Kings had just been together for maybe 1 or 2 more years, I could see the Kings coming away with that Game 7, maybe even in 6 games. However, that wasn't the case, and the Warriors moved on to round 2.
All right, let's start with the Western Conference Finals. So, like I said before, Denver leads the series 1-0 with a Game 1 win of 132-126. The Lakers went down, I think you mentioned earlier, 21, but they rallied really well. Anthony Davis had 40 points and shot 14 from 23 from the field. Other key contributors were Nikola Jokic, who had a triple-double of 34, 21, and 14. And then probably the most underrated player of that game was Rui Hachimura, playing big minutes off the bench, 28 minutes, and he shut down Jokic. When AD was on him, there was a stat, something like 2.5 minutes per possession, compared to him was only 0.5 every time Jokic touched the ball.
Yeah, just a great, obviously, shutdown play, and that led to Nuggets took that one away. But regardless, now let's talk about those championship team predictions, who you guys think, and obviously these series going on right now, who you think takes these away. I'm starting off. I have Heat's Nuggets going to the finals, and I have Heat in 4.
So I'm actually going to agree with the Heat there. I think Game 1 really set the tone for how it's going to go. The Heat coming into Boston, beating them by 7. However, I think the Lakers are going to take this series. Yes, they lost Game 1, but they were on the road, and they only lost by 6. I think they shouldn't be worried about anything. And for the finals, I'll take the Heat in 6.
So you said Heat in 4.
And not for the total championship, but right now, yes.
Oh, you mean Heat in 4 out of the East?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to say Lakers in 6 out of the West and Heat in 7 out of the East. And I'm going to take the Heat winning the finals in 6 games to the Lakers, a rematch of the bubble. A lot of people said, the bubble was a fluke, but you look at these 4 teams, that was the finals of the bubble. And I understand that was 3 years ago, but they're roughly the same team. The cores are the same. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry for the Heat, LeBron AD for the Lakers, Tatum, Brown for the Celtics, and then for the Nuggets, you have Jamal Murray back and Nikola Jokic. So these are incredible teams. Nuggets are really fun to watch. Jokic, he might be one of the slowest players in the NBA, but he's like a 5-tool player. He can do anything. Jimmy Butler single-handedly has put them in the Eastern Conference Finals. I understand they had some help from,
Bam,
Lowry, Bam, Kyle Lowry. But Jimmy Butler has put up amazing performances. So that's why I think they'll win the finals.
And then who do you guys think is going to be the championship MVP? Obviously great teams. You'd have to predict the teams that get there first, but who do you think could take this one away? Who's been playing well all year?
So going off of my predictions, I got the Heat and obviously Jimmy Butler. He's really the only reason they're there right now. If they don't have him, they were out in the first round. But
just to give a wider answer, I'm just going to pick one for every team, I guess. Lakers, they're going to give it to LeBron.
Yeah,
it's
always.
That's kind of like if Tom Brady's in the Super Bowl, he's winning the MVP, except that one year they gave it to Edelman. But anyway, Nuggets, it has to be Jokic, Heat, Jimmy Butler. And then the Celtics, it could be Tatum. But Tatum did not play well in Game 1. He had 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter with 3 points or something like that. So I could see it going to, Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year, Jaylen Brown. But safe pick is Jason Tatum.
Right. And then any final comments on any predictions or any upsets that you guys have seen so far that you were like, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen going into the playoffs?
The Knicks absolutely spanking the Cavs in 5 games. I think It's great for the city of New York. You see the videos all over the internet about how they win one game and they just go crazy. And it's a great atmosphere. That's the type of city I want to see winning games. I mean, if New York won the finals, I don't know what type of party would be down in New York, but it would be something crazy. I would love to see New York continue to win, as well as Sacramento, because, that young core of De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Keegan Murray, it's just a very, very cool and fun group to watch.
And a little fun fact, the Knicks actually have the largest market for fans in the NBA. So obviously the NBA itself is rooting for them to win, as that brings in a lot of revenue. Do you have anything on that, or what teams might be best to win the NBA in terms of revenue?
Well, I think if you can be bad for that long and still have that type of following, that just shows you how loyal your fans are.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Lions fans in the NFL. They're super
Nebraska in
loyal.
college football.
Super loyal. You might not have won all the time, but considering that that's what you are when you're losing, it would be so fun to be a part of when you're winning.
And the TV market is incredibly large. I mean, it drops off fairly quickly after you have New York, you have your LA teams. And then the Bulls, the TV market at number 3 for Chicago is half the size of New York, which is really incredible. It just shows how important those the New York and the LA teams are to the leagues. And that's why both of those cities have 2 teams.
Yeah. I mean, you also got to just think about how important they are in the sports history world. You got the Yankees in New York. You got the Dodgers in LA. And then the newer teams like the Rams. And then you also, the Jets and the Giants, there's just so much history in those cities, and they've been around for so long, and they just have sustained greatness. So that's why they have gained such a large following.
Same thing like smaller cities like Chicago. You've got the Cubs. You've got, I can't really picture the Bears. They've been around for a long time. It's the history. It always comes into play.
And then real quickly, final comments before we go. What team are you looking forward to watching next year? What team do you think can be successful that wasn't very successful this year?
There's definitely a lot of teams, but I mean, the Kings were successful, but I think they can make a larger run. Then I also believe the Knicks are starting to come into their own. I think the addition of was it Josh Hart? It was Josh Hart.
Yeah.
Is just amazing for them. I mean, he's playing almost the entire game for them, and he's just doing really well. And then I forget who said it, but those Villanova alums are doing really well. So him and Jalen Brunson.
For me, it's definitely the Orlando Magic. I mean, they haven't been looking too good the past couple of years, but they've got a young core similar to the Kings. They haven't made the playoffs or anything, but you got Franz Wagner, the Rookie of the Year, Paolo Banchero. They've got the 6th and 11th overall picks this year in this draft. So if they use those right, maybe trade for a superstar, I can see them going to the playoffs.
And how about Wembanyama? I'll end on this note. Probably going to the Spurs.
Absolutely going to the Spurs.
And that'll be it for segment 2. Segment 3 will be about the college lacrosse playoffs. We'll be back to you very shortly. Myself, Gray Tomasco. To my left, Will Langford. To my right, Rob Frangione. Signing out from segment 2.
And welcome back to segment 3 of season 2 Beyond the Whistle. Jace Harden joining alongside me, Greg Tomasco, and another new face, Dylan Stevens. We had Luke Framer on the first segment, NHL. We just did the NBA, and now we are on to college lacrosse. Greg, take her away.
Yeah, so a quick recap of the playoffs so far. Delaware Marist played in the play-in. Delaware took that one away, 25-10, a massacre. Delaware almost took down Duke. They had a lead at 7-3 early on in the game, but Duke came back and won by 1 goal. So now it'll be Duke, Michigan. Michigan obviously beating Cornell by 1 goal. Shout out to Justin Wiefelt, New Canaan alumni, the Fogo, who is honorable mention All-American. We have Penn State, Princeton. Penn State won by 1 goal to Princeton. A little bit of a, not an upset, but Princeton had the lead there and lost it. Big upset, Army West Point, Maryland. Army took down number 4 ranked Maryland, the last year's national champions, by 1 goal with a score of 16-15. Notre Dame smoked Utah. Hopkins smoked Bryant. And on the other side of the bracket, Georgetown squeezed one out from Yale by 2 goals. Virginia just blew out Richmond. So now we'll have Duke, Michigan, Virginia, Georgetown, Hopkins, Notre Dame, and Penn State, Army West Point. Dylan, what do you got?
So for my prediction, I think first go with Duke and Michigan. We see Michigan coming off a hot streak right now. They won Big Ten championship, and then they beat Cornell, who's been a top team this whole year.
Yeah.
But I think their streak comes to an end, and they lose to Duke. I know Duke had a close game against Delaware, but I think it comes to an end there.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at all these teams, predictions-wise, these are all going to be good games, I think. But Notre Dame, I just feel like they are just, they're just mad about what happened last year with the whole seeding and how they didn't make the tournament. And I think, their style of play, I think I'm going to have to take Notre Dame to take the national championship this year.
Yeah, let's go one by one. So I'll go on the Duke, Michigan, too. I'm going to take Duke in this one. I know it's a little bit of a tough one because Michigan is hot. They came off a championship. They just beat Cornell, but, Cornell's ranked 8th, Duke's ranked 1, and I think Duke takes this one away.
Yeah, the way Michigan's been playing, I mean, they're heating up at the right time. With that said, I think this is going to be a really close game, 1 to 2 goals. But I think, if Brendan O'Neill and that offense gets going, and then, at the X, I think Weedy takes a percentage at the X, but I think Duke takes this by, a goal or two. But I would not be surprised if Michigan wins.
Let's go, Dylan and I, with Hopkins, Notre Dame. I actually have Notre Dame in this one. No surprise there. But I do think there's a good chance that Hopkins wins. I think Hopkins is one of those teams that can come out of the blue and kind of take someone down.
Well, I agree with you, Gray. I think that's going to be the game of the week, honestly.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a tough game between two tough opponents where either team could win that day. But I think Notre Dame will win. They've been playing really good. Smoked Utah. I mean, and Hopkins smoked their player too, but I think Notre Dame will come out on top.
And then Penn State, Army, West Point. I think the upset that everybody who watches college lacrosse wants to call. Everyone's in love with West Point this year. What they've created, Coach Alberici, that whole team has been remarkable in what they've done this year. They took down Maryland. They've had a bunch of big wins earlier this season. And I think Army has the most momentum coming into this tournament. I saw Lax All-Stars post earlier this week that said, what team do you think has the most momentum? The two answers were West Point, and some people said Michigan. I think without a doubt, in my mind, West Point's going to take this one. They play with a lot of passion. They have a lot to play for. And, making the championship and the Final Four is something they've been working for.
I think that, Penn State-Army game, I think Penn State is – they have a 5 next to their name, 5 in the country. I don't think they're 5 in the country. I think Army's going to come in there, Coach Alberici, and just light them up. Hometown boy Benedong. I think Army's going to go all the way, and it's between them and Notre Dame for me.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Army, West Point won Patriot League championship. They're on a hot streak, just like Michigan. But I think unlike Michigan, I think they're going to lose. I do think Army's going to beat Penn State and keep their streak going and then play Duke in the semifinals and the Final Four.
Yeah, that'll be super interesting. Obviously, the Final Four, a super accessible game for us to all watch. I'm not sure exactly where it's being played this year, but definitely nearby. So Virginia, Georgetown. I personally have Virginia. I think Xander Dixon, Connor Schellenberger, all those guys. It's just too many all-stars on one team to lose in the round of 8.
And UVA, they're the number 2 team in the country, so you're probably like, yeah, thanks, know-it-all, but they're just sneaky. Like, even though they're 2 in the country, they're just sneaky, and their offense, defense, everything about them is just really good. And they have times where they just heat up. Lars Tiffany has built a stellar program in the past, 5 to 10 years, winning a couple national championships, and it's those teams for me. Virginia, Notre Dame, and Army. I don't think any other teams are competing with those teams, and I think those are the teams going all the way. So
I think UVA is great, but you can't take the talent away from Georgetown. They start off a little bit weak, but lately they've been very strong. They smoked Denver in the Big East championship, where Duke only beat them in overtime. But I do still think UVA is going to come out on top and win. They just too much talent to take away.
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Minikis and blanking on the second name here, All-American, obviously. But Georgetown's just a very strong team. They took down Yale, who's a powerful, sneaky squad. But who do you guys have for, winning it all and maybe an MVP?
Yeah, so my Final Four, I have Duke and Army on the other one side, and I think Duke's just going to keep winning. I credit all the talent to West Point, but I think Duke's just unstoppable right now. I think they're going to go to the finals and play UVA in the finals, and I think UVA is going to beat Notre Dame. We've seen all those top 3 ACC teams go back and forth, but I think in the finals, UVA and Duke We've seen Duke win twice this year against UVA, but I don't think that happens a third time. I think UVA will come out on top the third time and learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, this is tough. I said Notre Dame earlier. I'm going to have to stick with Notre Dame, right? They've got a chip on their shoulder from what happened last year. I said it already, and I'm going to say it again. I think the teams that are going, Virginia, Notre Dame, Army, and then that fourth team, Duke again, and then so it's tough, but I'm going to take Notre Dame winning it all. Their team is just built around, defensively. Defense wins championships, and then there on out, their offense is stellar, and just what they build every year, and especially in the past 3 years, I just don't see how Notre Dame wouldn't win.
I think obviously, there's no doubt there's going to be an ACC team in the championship. The ACC, obviously,
it's been incredible.
The Ivy League was probably the dominant league last year in terms of records, number of teams in the playoffs, but this year it's without a doubt the ACC. You have the top 3 teams on every single rankings list anywhere, and they're all ACC teams. So I think it's no surprise you might have an ACC championship be the championship because obviously they don't play an actual playoff bracket. So I have Duke and Notre Dame in my championship. I think Duke takes this one away. I think they've been in the Final Four for too long. I think they finally are gonna get their championship. They haven't won one in a little while, and I think it's gonna feel pretty good. They got guys like Brendan O'Neill who only have a short time left, and having strong guys like that in the program, and obviously strong recruiting class.
They want to win.
We'll build to a bright future.
Yeah, and before you go, these teams just want to win, right? Brendan O'Neill doesn't want to go out without a national championship, right? So he's going to do everything he can, motivate his teammates, so he can leave Duke with a ring on his finger.
I think it's funny how we all chose different ACC teams because it really shows that
how strong that conference is.
Any team of them can win, and I think that's what we're going to end up seeing. And it's not like last year where everyone knew Maryland was just going to win. Yeah. This year it could be really any of the teams, maybe not even one of the ACC teams, but ultimately I think it's going to
shows the growth of the sport and where it's headed, and in the next decade or two. All right, that should just about do it for segment 3 of our 3-segment podcast, just about 30 minutes. Chase Harden, Gray Tomasco, and Dylan Stevens. The first segment, NHL. Second, NBA. And third, college across. 2 new faces, Luke Frame. And, of course, today, Dylan Stevens, again, saying so long from the NCTV podcast room.